Since nearly the beginning of the Pokemon series, berries and their associated mechanics have been a quiet but foundational part of these games at large. These fruit-themed items were initially quite simple, being introduced in Gen 2 as a small set of items Pokemon know how to use on their own that would also uniquely respawn once a day through their special trees. Despite these humble beginnings, berries would see an explosion of mechanical depth and added character over the following generations. New berries, mechanics, and minigames with them would all come to light in future titles. My favorite of these, and what I view as the most complete version of the idea, can be seen in Pokemon X and Y, where there's a level of depth that elevates the concept from mere feature to full-on farming simulator. And it's this shocking complexity that I'd like to explore today. But before we start farming, I gotta get browsing. And who better than with today's beautiful sponsor, Opera GX. But things weren't always so beautiful. Before Opera GX, using the internet was like this. And I cannot stand for this. But with Opera GX's myriad of mods to customize my experience, I can turn this boring browse into the beautiful browse of tomorrow. And to commemorate today's video, I'm rocking this sweet Pokemon XY boutique mod to give my browser a complete Gen 6 coat of paint from top to bottom. I've got this beautiful animated background on every new tab with the wonder of the Kalos region on full display. It's even got light and dark mode themes based on the box legendaries. There's menu sounds playing whenever I type or mess with one of the tabs, and that sweet theme I love so much is playing in the background. My compliments to the chef on this one. And this is just the beginning of what Opera GX has in store. Beyond the mods, we've got the ever helpful GX control for limiting the resources the browser is allowed to use. If it's ever hogging CPU or RAM, just hit the resource with one of the limiters so you can get back to doing what's important. And speaking of, we've got another Grand Slam feature with the GX Corner. You get this massive gaming hub built into the sidebar. It's like if Nintendo Power had a built-in video player. Let's see what they've got today. Thank goodness Heihachi is back in Tekken. I've been wanting to face off with this guy ever since my dad threw me in that volcano. And World of Goo 2, oh boy, I cannot wait for this one. And if you're looking to make the change, getting set up in Opera GX is just a simple click of the import button to bring over any settings you already have in place. You can download Opera GX today for free with my link below, and big thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. X and Y initiated a change for the Pokemon series at large. With the move to the 3DS, there seemed to be a new focus for the everything else you could do in a world like this. Suddenly there were clothes to try on, picnics to be had, and rollerblading to be done among many new extracurriculars now available to players. One humble addition in this vein can be seen in the berry fields, an entire plot of farmland managed by the player that acts as a hub for everything berry related, with these fields just so happening to be our focus today. This quiet and beautiful landscape would boast a farming experience like never before, combining the pieces present in prior games with a cohesive set of new features to make the whole thing really feel complete. So let's get farming in the fields. To get started growing, you'll need to play a little ways through the story up until Campfire Town so you can access Route 7 where the fields are located on the south side. This is very early into a playthrough, only requiring a single gym battle and just a couple hours of play. So even if you're just starting out, it won't be long before you can till the crops. When you first get here, a grandpa and granddaughter duo will immediately accost you about taking over management of the fields, with a guarantee that you'll love fieldwork. Who doesn't? And then after a quick explanation on planting and watering berries, the field is all yours. You get some Orin and Pekka berries just for showing up so you can get to work immediately. Just plant a berry in a hole and water until it's grown. It's that simple. And in prior games, that would be the full extent of it. You just need to go out and find rare berries and then grow them in order to harvest large quantities. Grab the lychee berry off Gen 3 Mirage Island for instance, and you've theoretically got that for life as long as you farm responsibly. These same rare berries are seemingly nowhere to be found in X and Y. The EV reducing berries and the pinch berries specifically are all in the game but have no physical location. And this is because they must instead be grown using X and Y's unique crossbreeding mechanic, with all of the aforementioned berries being mutations, born through crossbreeds of other plants. These mutations have a chance of occurring when one species is planted directly next to another. Like our freebie Orin and Pekka berries from earlier have a chance of producing a Qualot berry if planted in this manner. And I know for sure that the potential crossbreed will be a Qualot because the mutations are fortunately not completely random, and instead adhere to a pretty straightforward table of combinations. But just knowing that still doesn't mean this is going to be easy. For one, just because we plant the correct berries next to each other does not mean we're guaranteed a mutation, so any desired cross may take several tries. And like any other harvest, real world or video game alike, Growing plants takes time and effort. This is also nothing new for Pokemon at large, however. In fact, the original edition of berries commemorated the addition of the in-game clock, and not just held items. The idea has always been to spend real-world time waiting on your plants to grow, so you have something to come back to. You get resource management on the front end, and longer-term player satisfaction on the back. But this is another area where X and Y stand out against the rest. Maintaining your crops is a significantly more active process than in other games. The usual expectation is simply watering your berries roughly once every 12 hours. If you do, you'll generally receive a higher yield come harvest time. X and Y change this amount to a much more generous 24 hours, but with an additional check every 2 for either weeds or hungry bug types impeding your plant's progress. And it's up to you to keep these pests at bay. Infested plants will be clearly identifiable as such by their shaking in the overworld. And if you interact with them, you actually get to battle the Pokemon that's hiding inside. But whether you decide to engage in some actual pest control or just let them go, the plant gets cleared out either way. These are also very unique as far as encounters go. The bug you encounter is linked to the color of the tree's berries in the overworld, so they can make for very convenient shiny hunts if that's your type of thing as well. The cleanup is even simpler with the weeds, as simply pressing A will remove them from the tile and put your plants back to normal. While both of these elements are admittedly pretty basic features, I find them to be one of the most alluring parts of this whole system, as having to engage in this more manual process has me feeling immersed and more attached to my precious plants than ever. Little bells and whistles like this, even if they're simple, go a long way in making game constructs feel like actual things I'm taking care of instead of just being another resource to manage. Like I'm getting sort of a Tamagotchi vibe from this whole setup. And those who engage with the setup will be handily rewarded. Every time you successfully bump off, a bug or a weed will go to raise the yield on that specific plant, so those who dutifully garden can reap a gigantic harvest. The exact ranges are species specific, but bottom line, do the work and you'll reap the benefits. Another measure we can take in this vein is mulching the soil, a return feature from Gen 4. But unlike in those games, where mulches and their specific effects can be shopped for, you'll need to craft them using the composter available near the berry field's entrance. The composter takes 3 berries at a time and spits out mulch depending on the color of the berries inserted, with combinations available that raise a plant's yield, raise the amount of times you can water it, and raise its chance for mutation. So mulch is another extremely valuable tool, and one we can specifically employ towards the goal of crossbreeding. But even if you do all of that, pest control, weeding, mulching, and take perfect care of a plant, you'll only ever yield a single mutation, if any. That's okay though, because we only need that one to start the cycle again with that new mutated berry. You can also very easily observe when a plant is mutating, as it will have an even number of buds in the overworld instead of the usual odd. So that's your cue to protect that specific plant with everything you've got. On top of the time required, the other obstacle to successful mutations is complexity. Like our Orin plus P.E.K.K.A equals Qualat example from earlier could be considered a first-degree mutation. Qualat can then go with Tenga to make Ganlon for a second-degree mutation. And then would you believe it, Ganlon with Lychee gives you Key for a third-degree mutation. Folks, we are dealing with grandchild levels of farming complexity here. And with that said, I want to appreciate the entire family tree. This monstrosity is why I love this feature so much. Once I started figuring it out in my first playthrough, there was so much to dive into and work towards. I got lost in the magic of these fields. But I can also pretty squarely see the problem with this system as well, because I just as much felt lost trying to engage with it. When the games came out and online resources were less fleshed out, berry breeding was a relatively high challenge, yet also one that was borderline invisible unless players sought it out, because it offers next to nothing in terms of in-game hints, only giving you positive reinforcement after the fact. The initial explanation encourages you to plant a wide variety of berries, but only after you successfully pull off your first mutation does an NPC focused on the mechanics show up and explain how things work. She's definitely a welcome addition. She keeps records of your successful mutation recipes, and by doing so confirms that the system isn't completely random. But beyond her confirmations, these discoveries are entirely on your shoulders. And if we go back to the big table, you may notice that some of the second generation parents enter the equation as non-mutations. These are berries that you would need to go out and find in the rest of the region, and then successfully pair with the correct first generation mutant to continue the chain, which is again, incredibly easy with a guide, but very difficult to even come up with if you're just playing through the game. So it makes a lot of sense that almost every friend I asked said they passed on this mechanic in their original playthroughs. It's an awesome system with all this incredible depth I'm absolutely in love with. but it's definitely fair to say it might have mystified itself to a point of nonsense as well. But now that the documentation is so accessible, it's a great passive activity for anyone giving X or Y another playthrough. Like the previous gens, it's a fun thing to check in on every now and then, but with this having better incentives and more to look forward to in terms of resource management. And finally, let's talk about the rewards. For one, you obviously get access to a theoretically infinite supply of any berry you're able to mutate, and every mutant has valuable effects for trainers. That being hard locked behind a feature like this is something I would normally have a problem with, but berries being regenerative really saves the whole thing. If you can get just a single berry through outside means, you get both that berry and the step on the mutation tree for life. So you've got some alternative measures if you need a Salic berry to run that one substitute set, for instance. You can also take your harvest to the juice shop in Lumio City to blend up special drinks for your Pokemon. There's unfortunately no minigame here like there was with Pokeblocks or Poffins, but the juice makes up for it with a ton of value in any blend. The effects of any drink are highly dependent on the two berries put inside, and if you're just blending haphazardly, you'll generally want to pick two of the same color in order to get a friendship boost alongside an EV boost in a specific stat, with each color corresponding to a stat along the lines of this chart. One extremely unique thing you can blend here is the Perilous Soup, a drink that completely resets a Pokemon's EVs. This could definitely be a valuable thing for any trainer, but this also represents the pinnacle of the mutation mechanic as it can only be blended through a combination of the two third-generation berries, so it's a specific and usable prize for mastering the fields. And those berries are also valuable for making a mulch that combines all the effects of the other three, so they specifically can be very helpful. I guess it's sort of a weird one, but I always appreciate when they offer unofficial badges like this for going through the full extent of their weird side quests. It puts a nice cherry on top for the whole process. And a whole process it was. We've ventured out to the berry fields of Kalos and mastered this odd little farming sim along the way. Maybe it was just being in the right place at the right time, but this is easily one of my favorite side quests in the whole series. It's got this perfect balance of being a background task you don't have to check back in on too often, while also having enough complexity where I'm always excited to do that checking back in. Maybe someday they'll outdo this iteration, but for now I feel comfortable calling this an exploration of Pokemon's best farming experience. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I'm extremely grateful I get to put these videos out there, and I wouldn't be able to keep doing it without you all. So let me know what you thought down below. I'll see y'all next time. Droomish out.